Immigrants, Black people, and all struggling families are facing a crisis. Today's episode will address your concerns with a leader who is dedicated to public service. Welcome to this very important episode of the Immigrant Magazine Weekly with one of Los Angeles' most dynamic and impactful public servants. Herb J. Wesson Jr. served as the first African American president of the Los Angeles City Council in the city's history from November 2011 through 2019 and has represented Council District 10 since 2005. An advocate for social justice, protecting the rights of local immigrant families, his mission has always been to make Los Angeles a better place to live, work, and raise a family. Well, this time around, Herb is taking a bigger step in public service. He is running for county supervisor. Having done so much already, let's find out what makes him such an enigmatic and charismatic leader and what we can expect, especially in a time when we all need leaders who understand the plight of struggling immigrant families. But first, if you haven't subscribed, please do that right now by clicking on the subscribe button and ringing the notification bell. Also press the like button so that YouTube will share our videos and we can all get across. So welcome to the show, Councilman.
It's a pleasure to be with you today.
How are you doing?
I've been blessed. I'm very healthy. My family's healthy, but we've been very busy. We've given away over 1 million pounds of food, 40,000 face coverings, thousands of bottles of hand sanitizer, 500,000 diapers to mothers, young mothers from challenged communities. We're now actually taking testing to the people. So which I'm trying to figure out a way to make it easier for the immigrant community. The immigrant community is probably one of the most untested communities because they don't like to get their information in the system.
Right.
So we're coming up with no question testing where we just test you and 2 days later you get your results. So we're very, very busy.
I'm happy to hear that. And you just touched on it about the immigrant community. They're very peculiar in the way they do things. And also sometimes because of the way the system is set out, there's no manual for the immigrant community to follow
True.
it. So sometimes it's difficult. And that's why I really wanted us to have this conversation. So, sometimes most of the people in public office don't really pay attention to the immigrant community. So everything is generalized and nothing is specific to the immigrant community. I'm just wondering what it is that makes you take the immigrant community so personally, so seriously, and have this humane attitude with them.
Well, I guess I've just been that kind of person my entire life. When I started out in politics and I was in the state assembly, I helped to create the Office of Immigrant Affairs, which is located within the Attorney General's office. And I did that because I recognized that there was a need. Everybody in this country is an immigrant, other than our indigenous people.
Yeah.
So it's incumbent upon us to provide them with the opportunities that they need to succeed in this country, and also to educate them on what it takes to get the resources that they need so that they can take care of their families.
When I had the vision for the Immigrant magazine, it was really because I did not like the way immigrants were portrayed by mainstream media or any other outlets, or even just the public service announcements. They were always about, the things that immigrants were doing that were not so good, or the illegal and all these kinds of stories. But you see differently. What has been your experience with immigrants?
Well, I've had a very positive experience with immigrants. In fact, it has helped me to become a more prouder Black man, with having my lineage kind of disconnected by having a relationship with the immigrant community, in particular, the African immigrant community. I feel connected and I understand the importance. Just a few years ago, I was adopted into a Nigerian family, which in the beginning I didn't think was this big thing, but I am so proud. And I have my African name, Agu, which means lion. That there was a lot of thought that my brothers and sisters put into what do we name him. And so I'm always available for them. And whenever I have been in need, they have always quickly mobilized to be at my side because I view myself as their representative. And I'm glad of the working relationship that we have and the things in the future that I hope that we will be able to accomplish.
I'm so glad you touched on the African community because, well, Agu, as you've been named, well, I'm from Cameroon, and there are many of us from Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, but doesn't matter. We are all from Africa. Have
Yes,
you been to Africa yet? Have you been to any of the countries?
I have not had the pleasure. And
No
so I
way.
look forward to that when all of this is over, when we have control of this COVID-19. And I am just so excited about taking my wife of 39 years with me to visit several countries in Africa. Nigeria will be the first.
Oh, that of course it has to be. So, have you done your DNA, and did you find out that you were from Nigeria, or was it just um,
I was just selected by the Nigerian people.
mhm.
When I did a DNA test, it was traced back to Sierra Leone.
Wow. Okay, now Sierra Leoneans, hello, what are you waiting for? So anyway, so now talking about the African community, I'm glad that you've really embraced the African community because most other immigrant groups, the Latinos, the Europeans, have that connection. They have communities out here, and the African community sometimes is wanting. As an African American, given what we're experiencing today with the social injustices that are facing people of African descent, Black people, minority communities, especially our Black males. How do you think that African immigrants can be a part of the movement to change what is going on within the community? Because it affects me just as much as it affects you.
Yes, it does. And I think the important thing, and probably the most important thing that I'm going to do after this November election is put in place some kind of direct connection with the African community so that we can ensure that proper information is given to them so that they understand what's going on in this country, what benefits they qualify for, how they draw down on these benefits, understand the other cultural events that are going on so that they can participate. What my goal is to ensure that they are full partners moving forward as we work to create a more fair and just United States of America.
That's amazing. And the Black Lives Movement has been criticized. And I think people misunderstand the movement from a movement that is meant to cater to the social injustices that people are facing. And sometimes I've met African Americans who I'm expecting to learn something from them, being an African or an African immigrant. And there's this confusion, and they think that sometimes the police brutality that's happening somehow is justified. And then our African community, we don't understand the difference and we wonder what's going on. And yet, if my son was pulled over, he would be just as affected. So can you give us a little historic about systemic injustice facing Black people in this country so that we understand what the problem really is?
Well, brutality, violence in any form is unacceptable and in most cases unnecessary. A perfect example, now that I'm going back to my youth. When I was a young man at about 15 years old, I was taught how to drive a car, just like any little white kid would be taught how to drive a car. But I was also taught how to react, not if I were stopped by the police, but when I was going to be stopped by the police. Whereas you don't hear stories of that kind of training in communities outside of the Black and brown community. And I just think that my grandparents and parents had to teach me how to act as I was driving because I was going to be stopped. I think that shows that there's a disparity right there. So not only was it tough enough for me to know when to make a left turn or right turn, slow down, put on my turn signals, I had to learn how to act when I was had an encounter with law enforcement. So I think it's these little subtle things that let you know that based on the way that you look, you're treated differently. I have a lot of friends from other backgrounds that have never, ever been stopped by the police in their lives.
Unbelievable. And yet it's the reality. So what do you want to tell African immigrants about the value of their voice in a movement like this?
Yeah, because all voices must be heard. One of the reasons why, even with all of the flaws in this country, that we are the greatest country is because of our diversity and the gifts and the knowledge and the experience that the African community has to offer is so important, especially to African Americans, you know, to let us see you standing proud, to let us know your history and your culture, because that's our culture as well. And as we're moving forward to try to make this a more fair and a more just country, the voice of Africans has to be heard as much as Latinos, as much as Europeans. And right now, it's not. There is just not that mechanism in place that affords them the opportunity to understand how to connect with these other organizations so that their voices are heard. Because your voice is my voice.
Absolutely. And sometimes I do feel like an outsider, but it's nice to hear that our voices matter. And speaking of which, I know that you were working on some policies for police reform. And there's been a lot of talk about the defunding and people don't understand what's going on. I read the press releases. Can you elaborate a little bit about?
I'm so glad, Pamela, that you brought that up. When you hear phrases like abolish the police, defund the police, I think that in some respects, those are just real hard hitting phrases that get your attention.
Okay.
In the city of LA, what we are focusing on is reimagining public safety. What does that mean? And reimagining public safety, I believe, starts with investing in communities of color. Statistics or history would show that communities that are invested in have a smaller crime rate. When I think about reimagining public safety, we think about how can we deal with individuals that face mental challenges or substance abuse challenges without using force. How can we do that in an unarmed capacity. And these are things that we're discussing now in the city of LA. The possibility of pairing mental health experts and fire department people to go out and make these kinds of calls. So reimagining public safety is just trying to help it evolve and be as most efficient as it can be. If we can take a lot of these unnecessary responsibilities that law enforcement does and give it to another group of people that hopefully would be trained from our community to perform these functions, not only would it be cheaper, it would also free up law enforcement to go to gun-related incidents, or where people are going to be raped or robbed or burglarized.
That's awesome. So I'm glad it's not about people thinking that we're not going to have a police force. It's just, like you said, reimagining how we can compartmentalize the resources and put them in the respective adequate places, right?
It's exactly what it's about. It's about being as efficient and as effective as we can. You know, a lot of people, let's hypothetically say that there was someone was out, maybe loud, causing a disturbance because this individual had too much alcohol to drink. Right now, you would call the police. The police would go, they'd get that person, they'd arrest them, they'd take that individual to one of the local lockups and lock him up. While they're doing all of this, somebody could be literally breaking into your home. Why not have an unarmed response team that would go out, take care of this individual, give them a bottle of water, let them calm down, take them home, and then leave them with a citation where in the next 40 days they have to go and appear at court for drunk and disorderly or whatever. We need to start thinking outside of the box. And usually and so many Black people in this country have been, let's say, under the influence, they've asked for help, but somehow their encounter with law enforcement escalated and they were either injured or killed. So we need to look at these areas where conflict can quickly happen and see if there's a better approach in dealing with them.
I really like that. So now, speaking of which, we are dealing with so many issues on many different.
Yes, we are.
Immigrants, we all live in this country, and so everything that happens to you happens to me. The pandemic, the coronavirus, it has ravaged and crippled lots of businesses and families, and immigrant families have been really victimized because, as you know, 90% of new businesses are actually created in this country by immigrant families.
Yes.
It's mom and pop next door, is the self-employed somebody. What have you been able to accomplish in your district to help immigrants who are going through this difficult time?
You know, we need to do more. But one of the things that the city of Los Angeles did, and it did quickly, we set aside $40 million to use as grants to help small businesses. But what I've been finding out, that most of these grants don't work their way all the way down to our immigrant community business owners. And a lot of that has to do with communication and outreach. That's why I said earlier on in the program, we need to figure out a better way to keep all of our immigrant communities informed of what is going on and what kind of aid and support they qualify for.
That'd be awesome. And you know, sometimes some of the challenges are just simply that immigrants don't feel like they have the right credit. There's so many things that come into play that, you know, a big corporation has access to in terms of resources, intellect, and everything else. And the mom and pop, you know, has no clue where to start filling those applications and that they qualify. Can you tell us a little bit about how we can overcome those kinds of obstacles? Because then you turn around and you see big Kanye West and big companies getting the money, and the small businesses are still suffering.
Well, I think the most important thing is, which I believe is happening, is that your local governments have to, number one, realize that some of the most struggling businesses are the mom and pop businesses and businesses from the immigrant community. So we have a responsibility, I think, to do more to reach out to them. And a lot of the disconnect comes because we don't have the way to properly get that information to all of the immigrant communities. So we in the African American community and the African community may be a little behind in that area, but that makes it more incumbent upon each and every one of us to create this kind of information system that does not exist today. I mean, and you know better than I, because you try to direct and help individuals from African countries, and you know how challenging that is for you, and you understand the system. So
Exactly.
we have to be able to provide organizations like yours with more data, with more information, and in some respects, funding. You know, when we do get past this pandemic, and we will get past this pandemic, I'd like to work with you guys to try to come up with some kind of cable ability, digital media ability to have programming that individuals can just flip the switch and understand what's going on, where they're very comfortable listening to people that they believe. And I don't think we have that. You know, I don't know where our African brothers and sisters go now to get that type of information. So folk like me need to make that a priority. And that's something that I pledge to you right now will be a priority of mine.
That is such music to my ears because, as you know, people listen to the people they listen to, and mainstream media does not accommodate the
No.
immigrant needs or the cultural needs and biases that we face as immigrants. So, thank you so much for that pledge, which really just brings me to this question. You are making a headway towards being county supervisor. And you've
Yes.
done so much already, so I cannot wait. So what's going to be different this time around?
Well, I don't think anything is going to be different. I am who I am. When this pandemic hit, I didn't retreat to the safety of my home. I hit the streets. I worked with the community. We came up with what we felt was needed, an emergency response program, again, where we've delivered essential needs to individuals in our region. And I think what we'll do, we'll build upon that. I didn't realize just how many people would would need so much. You know, I mentioned we were doing food giveaways and things of that nature, and testing programs and hand sanitizer. I didn't know that we have a significant percentage of people, because there's such high unemployment, that had to make a choice between feeding themselves and feeding their companion animals. So we've given away dog food and cat food and kitty litter. And I wouldn't know that that was a problem if we weren't programming directly with the people. So I think we'll keep that going, we'll expand it, and then we will begin to ensure that we're putting in place the types of programs that help small business and helps people get back to work.
That's just so amazing. Can I ask you a personal question?
Yes,
What sparked your interest in politics and public service? Because you enjoy it.
I live for it.
Exactly.
Um, you know how plants have to have a certain bit of sunlight?
Yeah.
I have to have a big bit of people. And when I'm not engaged with people, then that adversely affects me. I don't like people. I love people. But I was inspired my senior year of college, and I went to a small Black university in Pennsylvania where we had a lot of African students. That's where I learned about soccer. We had people from Cameroon. They were all on our soccer team. But I went to a small Black university and I met a man, God rest his soul, named Ron Dellums, who was a congressperson at that time and ultimately became the mayor of the city of Oakland. And he inspired me to be a public servant, not so much an elected official, but a public servant out there helping people. And believe it or not, my public service career did not start in politics. It started as being a youth coach at the YMCA.
Oh my gosh. This just comes naturally to you. It's just so admirable. Well, most people don't see public service or holding office or running for office as a noble job, and they see it more in terms of exploitative when they look at the leaders who are more exploitative than they're really serving. What can you tell us about this upcoming elections? The fact that we have the first African American Asian VP running mate for the White House.
Well,
Tell me about leadership and
you
what
know what?
leadership brings.
I think that I'm a Democrat, and every 2 years, Democrats tell all of the voters that this is the most important election in your life. Well, this time it's actually true. And it's not so much that I'm concerned about how negative things would be under an additional 4 years of Donald Trump. I'm excited about the possibilities of the next 4 years under Biden Harris. And what you said is just so unbelievably exciting. We have an opportunity to inspire young girls, in fact, inspire kids of color throughout this nation if we elect the first woman, first Black woman, first East Asian woman, first graduate from a historically Black college to become vice president. So that I view as inspirational in itself. But we have an opportunity to look at racist systems that should be reformed under Biden Harris. At least we will have an opportunity to put some of those reforms in place. So I look at this as we have so much more to gain than we have to lose.
That's awesome. And I'm so glad you established that, because there's so much at stake. Now, for you, coming back to you, your tagline is help Wesson for supervisor, lighting the way to a greater LA. I love that. What can we immigrants expect lighting our way?
I think you can expect more access than you've ever had before. I think that you can expect to have an individual that is going to be on the ground with you, on the front lines with you, an individual that's going to have a listening ear. I have been blessed to accomplish some phenomenal things in my life, but I have never accomplished these things alone. I have been blessed with an ability to bring people together and to get things done. And I believe that together we can do anything.
That's amazing. So how can our audience support you and make sure that you get there so we can get things done?
Well, I think the most important thing is to have this conversation about what type of individual do you want to have sitting in that county chair? Do you want the kind of person that's going to be out in the community with you? And I think once we get buzz amongst the folk, which I'm beginning to hear now because we're everywhere, and people have embraced me and embraced this campaign, because they're part of this campaign. So the most important thing for me is to make sure that people that can vote, vote. They vote for Herb, and they tell everybody that they know, without a doubt, that I am the choice. So Lord willing and the people willing, then I will be elected. And I think people need to understand that this election is not about me. It's about we. It's about us. It's about those that follow us.
I love it. On that note, I'm not just going to add anything. I'm going to let your words sink. Vote, vote, vote. Thank you so much for joining me and joining my audience. And I'm looking forward to having this conversation another time.
I look forward to it as well. So, Agu signing off.
Agu signing off. Peace. Thank you, Herb. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. If you did, I would love to hear what you think and about our discussion today. If you didn't, I still want to hear from you. So please share them in the comment section or send me an email at publisher@immigrantmagazine.com. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to hear suggestions. We want to hear what you want to hear more of. So see you next time on Immigrant Magazine Weekly here on TIMTV, Voice of Immigrants in America. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Pam Anchang, and like us on Facebook, The Immigrant Magazine. Thank you.